Hello, John. Thank you for coming back to the channel. This is episode, I believe, 22.
I've lost
Um,
count. Thanks for reminding me.
yeah, I think it's 22. And I just want to remind the audience, please make sure you click the link to get to John's website. I have the link in the description of this video and all my videos that I've done with John. There are actually three links there that you can click to get to his website and sign up for the periodical, sign up for a reading. We'll periodically remind you to click the link in this recording. But please go to the website, take a look at his offerings. So, John, a lot has happened since we last talked. We weren't able to record last week, and a lot has happened in the last 7 days. So I don't
That's
know
why
where you.
we, yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know where you want to begin. There's plus we're getting close to the election
Yeah, well,
in the United States. So
just give a background to your watchers is that that's why there's so much going on that I had to do two specials. I mean, every 4 years when it comes to October and November, this is my hardest work because I've been making presidential predictions, usually by popular vote, but it's kind of branched out also. And when somebody's going to win the electoral college, like with Trump, and I've done it 14 times in a row since 1968 with Humphrey and Nixon. And I'm now trying for my 15th attempt at my winning streak. And because of that winning streak, a lot of people want to interview me and it gets busy. But it's been so busy now with the third world conventional phased war and other things that I had to do a monster special that looks at the last quarter of this year into the next year, with some of it going as far as 2026 into 2026, some of the things, especially dealing with the astrology of the future of Israel and which is currently under the grip of a very powerful conjunction of that because it's on Uranus and Taurus. It's also affecting the Israel's birth sun, which is 23 degrees Taurus. And it should, though, because of the end of the great cycle of um, the American cycle of Pluto, which our country has for the last 248 years, existed born under the Pluto Capricorn 29 degrees birth position on July 4th, 1776. And we finished it. And all this stuff happened right as we've done the seventh pass of retrograde direct course, before it goes launching off, which it will do, I think, finally, right after the elections, launching off into another 248 years around the zodiac before it touches Pluto again. So we've ended a great epoch, which Pluto rules epochs and great cycles. And this is like a grand generation of American existence. And now we're kind of going through this death and potentially redefining rebirth, although, and it really will depend very much on who gets elected, where we're going in this. It could end up being the beginning of the painful end of the hegemonic era we've been in for some 34 years since the end of the last Cold War. But that's going to rapidly decline now. And really, some good news, folks. We're going to love not being a hegemon anymore. It's very unnatural for Americans to be an imperium. It's just not our nature. And so I tell you, it's going to be a little painful and may even be a little like an implosion of the Soviet Union was for the Russians. But what's if we can just bear down and get through it and come home from all these foreign engagements, which is so expensive. We have no money left for, we're giving money to Ukraine, we're giving money to Israel, we're giving money to everybody. And we have things that need to be nation built here. And so this whole military industrial complex addiction that the country has is very toxic and it must end, or we will end. This country will break up. The United States will be the disunited states. in the next 4 years. And we may from that have to even either be in a cold civil war or a hot civil war. So hopefully, and a much more chaotic one, scattered through the states than what happened in our last civil war. And then there's a lot of American prophets and other prophets that have talked about this potential, the break of the United States. It's certainly, if it doesn't break up, we are in a cycle where the linking verb is changing. The United States is, which is what we called it before the Civil War happened, after the Civil War happened. Before that, we call it the United States are, invoking some more sovereignty of states over federal government. We are slipping back into are again. And that's not a bad thing. It just means there's going to be more autonomy. That's why we have an electoral college. It took me decades to understand because I hated the electoral college. But now I realize I was wrong. Now I understand why the founding fathers did the Electoral College, because we're not just provinces of a bigger nation like most nations have. We literally have a quality of sovereignty in our states that's more than most other places. The only places I can find parallels to this is Bavaria. When Germany became unified, Bavaria had more autonomy than the other German states. And so that's one parallel. I mean, as much autonomy as all our states have here. And so it does require some mathematical thing to counterbalance, a vote that deals with how many of the people are in the country, opposed to a two-senator system, no matter how small or large your state is. Because, if you're California and you have all these people, if we lost the Electoral College, it would surrender most of the power to the states on the Atlantic and the West Coast, and all the states in the middle who are smaller. To have equal representation, they need the two senators system of our Senate. So that's, the founding fathers really thought way ahead about a lot of things, and the founding mothers like Abigail Adams. Um, and so 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 with all the things that are going on in the world, I had to create a very large 56,000 word 11 article pass on just world events, so that I could put that aside and get that off. I think on the 21st of October, I sent it to my subscribers, and it's fully illustrated. It's amazing. Getting lots of great feedback from it. It seems like my writing rises to the risings of this time's intensity. So it even surprises me how my writing is coming out now. Um, so, so if you join now, if you become a subscriber for either automatic payments, $5 or a little more a month, if you want to tip me a little more, or and then you can do through my links on my Hogue Prophecy free samples uh, uh, site, or $60 for a whole year. And because, wow, if there ever was a time for you to read what I have to say, I mean, it's one thing to hear me, which is great to hear and do it with Paul and others. But the details that I can get into in the writing is something, if you're interested in the details. Like a lot of things I can just kind of say, but if you want to see how I back up everything I say, it's become a member, because these are the halcyon times. These are the times where we are literally entering changes that are going to be the biggest changes in 500 years, what's left of this decade. So huge changes. And we'll talk a little bit about some of that, like what happened at the BRICS summit, the most significant summit. Future will see this. The most significant summit in the last half millennium happened in Kazan, Russia, uh, in this month, last week, I think. But you wouldn't know that if you were looking at the mainstream media and other places, because what I provide in a futuristic view of world trends is context. And I also provide history, because history is a context of why we did something back then. We're doing this stuff now. And in our day and age, to the threat of our future existence, our press is completely devoid of context. So it's very easy to judge the Russians are this way, or the Chinese are that way, or we're this way. And because there's no context, it's all babble, Tower of Babel. And if it doesn't get clearer, if there aren't more free places where people can tell an alternative view than mainstream media, then we will fulfill the prophecies of seers like Bartholomeus, Nostradamus, and especially in this case, Stormberger, who said if there's a third world war, we'd walk with our eyes wide open into it. And you can only do that if you're misinformed or uninformed, mostly uninformed. So so this is really a great time. If you've got a yes for this, just go to hogueprophecy.com. And the links are here on Paul's page here. And consider donating to me doing this. There's no us. I'm a one-man magazine. I'm the editor. I'm the boss. Anyway. So just come to me and check it out. And what will happen is you know you will see this new thing that I wrote in October, and I immediately started another 40,000 word magazine. I don't do this every day, but it's just because of this time. I'm doing another one that's solely on the presidential elections, uh, looking at the astrology, looking at the intuitions, looking at the Kabbalistic number 47 and what that means for a president having 47 as their vibratory number, and which is pretty challenging, especially if it harmonizes with the number 11, even more challenging. And so there's stuff like that. So a whole lot of prophecy. If you're into prophecy, especially these last two, this one I'm working on and the one I just did, which if you tell me when you donate, if you just put Paul C on it, and that'll immediately I will know to give you a free version of the previous one, and the presidential elections will come as you become a subscriber. So, and also another important thing for these kind of times is to do readings. And I do readings, and they are they're as interesting to me as they are to the people who are getting the reading, because I'm just the mailman. And I go, whoa, that was unexpected. That was interesting stuff. So anyway, yeah, with that, now let's see, the thing that comes to mind that I anticipated, actually, it looks like I was right in my articles that Netanyahu and the Jewish state would strike Iran before the elections. And I'd been writing about that weeks before people were kind of intimating it. But the good news is it was just a show. It was not a significant hit on Iran as advertised, which in a way is bought us a little time in that pressure cooker. That is kind of the Israelis who started this escalation by doing acts of war against, like bombing Netanyahu's been trying to get a full-scale war with Iran so that the Americans have to come in and save him and use their might to defeat his number one, the head of the snake, or the head of the octopus, as some people say, of all the tendrils that go to Yemen, goes to Syria, goes to Iraq, goes to Hezbollah, goes to Gaza, and so forth. And the so we dodged the bullet of that, because there's a lot of prophecies in Nostradamus about a war with Iran that has America in it in the Persian Gulf, and we lose it and lose our fleet in it. And yeah, so it's one I had to write a whole book about it back in 2007, Nostradamus, the War with Iran. And then I've updated it in 2013. I updated it as Nostradamus' War with Iran, Islamic prophecies of the apocalypse, because most people don't know the very rich eschatological tradition of prophecy that is in Islam about end times. And it's important to note because a whole lot of people who are radicals in the Islamic world, in the Middle East, and primarily, are are trying to fulfill prophecy as per what is written in the Hadith by Muhammad, which is not the same as the Quran. It is not it is him as a man, not as a prophet, trying to counsel what he thinks Allah meant, So, but it's not a holy book, but it's a commentary that what people in the Ummah, the community of believers in the earliest days of Islam, were asking questions. And for 300 years, it was only passed along in an oral tradition. So, um, the problem with that is that, and which in these scholars in Ankara, actually in the capital of Turkey, are actually starting to, they've come with an interesting premise because their Arabic is so good that they're noticing how a lot of the passages are more extreme rather than moderate as they go along, and it's very clearly in 10th century dialect, not 7th century. So they have been taking those parts out and just trying to get it back to the 7th century, the 600s, mid 600s when Muhammad was alive. And a lot of it was considered like Wahhabists, and Wahhabism is a very recent interpretation of Islam. It's one of the newest. It seems that farther back you go is a much more liberal view of the Quran than it currently exists in a lot of different parts of Islam. And a lot of it also has the prophecies of Muhammad being a prophet predicting the end times of Islam. And what is very interesting about it is that you probably have heard, if you watch the news, you hear about ISIS K. People go, what is this? Special K? Like, is this some new Islamic Kellogg's or something? Is this a bowl of, here, eat some ISIS K for breakfast? The, the, what it is that when ISIS was scattered, and well, now ISIS currently, what's left of it is a weapon of the CIA and the United States in its occupation of northeastern Syria. And also in an enclave in Idlib is what's left of the attempt of Al Qaeda to create an Islamic State, which is now just all crowded in a little northwestern province of Syria called Idlib. And so, but there are the more actually probably there are people in northeastern Afghanistan that are ISIS-K. And actually, the Taliban is fighting them now because the Taliban is making agreements as a government to get the Belt and Roadway of China, the grand Eurasian African connectivity of all these continents, free of any ocean side blocking of the United States and its fleet. So um, they're one of the agreements with the Chinese is, please control the ISIS-K, in part because the ISIS-K, it sounds like they are also CIA based as well. But where it started was that you ever wonder why not Muhammad, but why Osama bin Laden, who founded the front, the Al Qaeda. Why did he go to Why did he pick northeastern Afghanistan, the most inhospitable, mountainous vastness of the Hindu Kush region? Why, Hindu Kush it means killer of Hindus. in Sanskrit. So, because of the pathways, that's where all the great Islamic invasions into the Mughal empires and and into the Indian empires came from that source. So anyway, it's like there's actually this is why it's important to read Islamic eschatological prophecy, because it's all about the predictions of the apocalypse as the Islamic people see it. Um, Muhammad was asked by a believer, what do you think will happen uh, when when that final time comes? And it's elaborate, but just put it in shorthand. Um, he he basically spelled out everything that happened in the early part of the 20th century. First, though, kind of the separation and by the Crusaders. That's why you hear them always saying, calling the West Crusaders, because they said there'd be these new Crusaders. He said there would be this period where Islam in our future will be this great golden age. And of course, he's talking about not long, a few centuries after the spread of Islam from its inception out of Saudi Arabia, spread across all to Persia, to the Turkic areas, all the way to North Africa, and even to Spain and Granada. And at that time, it was a kind of a unofficial empire of Arab culture and Arab science and arts. It was their Renaissance. Um, well, it wasn't. It was not a resurgence, a renaissance. It was the Batha. Which is this is what Arabs. That's why you've heard about Ba'athist parties and stuff, where they're trying to unite the states of Araby together again, and it's failed a lot. But that is their word for Renaissance. Let's resurge. Let's repeat classical Arabic golden age that followed, oddly enough, after all the killing and purifying and stuff of the sword of Islam and all that. It settled down, and we got algebra, we got many some of the greatest things, some of the history of the Middle Ages and classical times were best recorded by Arabic scholars. Much of what the West gets about knowing about Rome and all this from Arabic scholars. And some of the greatest books in history, literature came from Arabic scholars during this time. Um, and like the Seven Pillars, and also the great Ali Baba, the great stories of this and that. And Baghdad was the jewel of that crown of capitals at that time. And so, but then with time, the Ottoman Empire dominated most of that region, and actually that even though it was a bit of a tyranny, it did cause a long period of peace through those regions. But when the Ottoman Empire collapsed, um, then it sounds like Muhammad was talking about that, and he was talking about there would be unwanted influence of the Crusaders, and they would divide the Arab people, and of course and the wealth would be exploited from them by the Crusaders. And I mean, you got to remember that Muhammad was in the 7th century, so even the classical Crusades were 300 years ahead of when he was saying these things. But I think it also means the way after the Ottoman Empire was divided by the West, Western colonial empires. They did try to divide it when they were drawing the new map, which even Lawrence of Arabia had something to do with. And he seems to have been referenced in these prophecies too, where they wanted to make sure that as oil was being discovered as the new great resource. They wanted to make sure that as few Arabs as possible had most of the oil. And they were able to achieve that by cutting off Kuwait from Iraq. And Saudi Arabia had a very small population then. Um, And they did this, but they could not. That's why Iraq became the trouble spot for the Western interests, because Iraq is populated, and it has one of the major oil areas. And so a lot of the tensions that led to wars, that led to a fight with Saddam Hussein and all that, was really the neocons trying to seize and control the oil interests of the United States and the Western world's industries when the first Cold War ended in 1989. And that was because of that, that was the cause of the growth of the neoconservative movement, which was a way of how, if we don't have a Cold War financing our wars, how can we create another way to keep the wars going? By taking over any rogue nations, many of which did not want to use the dollar anymore, like Libya, like Saddam Hussein, Somalia, all of that, and then tame the Middle East and Islamic irritations. And so he's talking about that, but from the other side of, these are people are exploiting us. And then what would happen eventually, if the tensions are not solved, would be the final battle, the final holy war. And it will, he said, the black flags of the believers in their black, dressed in black turbans, would issue out of Khorasan, Afghanistan. That is the northeastern corner of Afghanistan. That's why it's called ISIS K for Khorasan. Now, everybody in the Islamic world knows this, but nobody in the West seems to be even care about it. But this is why this feeling that it's a lot of people in the Middle East, especially, believe that these are the end times, where this big struggle would happen. What would eventually happen is that, I mean, you have the Shias have a slightly different version of it, but they're kind of along for the ride as well. And the Shia believe that there was a kind of epilogue prophet called the 12th Imam. And he was born in Samarra, Iraq. And when he was 10, when they're trying to assassinate him, probably the Sunni Caliph was trying to assassinate him because the Shia are the largest minority in the vast sea of the Sunni, the people of the main path. The Shia are so have a long feeling of being persecuted and abused by the majority, because when Muhammad created the caliphs, the Pope that would deal with the Ummah's the religious uh, realms of Islam would be the one leader, like the Pope is with the Catholic realms. And so the first caliph was Ali, who was married to, I believe, one of Muhammad's daughters. And so by that, he got resistance from other people who eventually created the majority Sunnah. See, the Shia, as I understand it, saw it as a holy bloodline, that the descendants of Ali came from the blood of Muhammad, through the sister, through the daughter. And this is a very simplistic way of looking at all this for all Muslims that are listening. I know it is, but for those who are not educated on this situation, the one of the biggest main issues that divides the majority from the minority Shia is that they have saints, and they make images of them, and which is against what a lot of people think. The Quran, Allah is not to be made an image of. Muhammad, at best, if you must make an image of him, you put him in a veil. Like, you'll see some of these Arabic paintings when you see a Muhammad and you don't see his face; he's in a veil with his beard coming out from under it. Um, because to actually paint Muhammad is kuf, it's blasphemous. Um, so um, he so there was a fight, and Ali was martyred, and then the Sunnis took over. And then this is very early in the Islamic world. They had their Protestants versus Catholic problem at the beginning of Islam, and it's still ongoing. Although in this battle with the Crusaders and the Jews in Jerusalem would return. Al-Quds is what it's called in Arabic, to Arabic people, Jerusalem. Jerusalem means city of peace. Pretty, not really always a city of peace. Jerusalem has been sacked and razed to the ground 8 times, and maybe a ninth is coming in our time with all that's going on. So it's a hope, it's an aspiration, but Jerusalem is not gotten there yet. But we always hope it will try and succeed. Um, so all these people coming in a horde out of the mountains of Khorasan in on their horses and marching in their ranks in phalanxes of swords and black flowing outfits and all those flags that we see today, the black flags with the white lettering of there's only one God but God, and Allah is his prophet in Arabic. Uh, this Muhammad saw. And he said that the believers, what would happen is um, half the believers would betray Islam and go to hell. The other third, I'm sorry, a third. The a third would be martyred, and the surviving third would be there to live in the purified world. Um, so, and it basically comes to this big holy war that comes through Persia all the way and ends at the Temple Mount, which is as holy to is the third most holiest sacred site of Islam. Medina and Mecca, or Mecca's first, Medina's second, is the Temple Mount in Jerusalem, is Al-Quds is the third, where the idea is Islam faithful believe that when Muhammad died, he mounted his horse on the Temple Mount and ascended to heaven from there. Um, and so, in honor of that, Al-Aqsa Mosque was built, I believe. Oh, well, it must have been before the Crusades, so way back, I think. And then later, they built the Golden Dome, the Mosque of the Golden Dome, which is kind of this era of Jerusalem, a kind of a real skyline, emblematic of Jerusalem. Is that beautiful Golden Dome. But what Israelis believe is that this mount belongs to them because it's where their first and second temples were built and destroyed and built again. And many believe now, in fact, I'm always concerned I'll wake up someday and I'll be watching their bulldozers tearing down Alaska and bulldozers tearing down the Golden Dome because of the religious messianic fever that is also in the Jewish people of Israel under this new, Zionism is getting religion now. It didn't used to have that, but now this whole idea of the possibility of taking care of all our ancient enemies at once with the help of our neighbor, the United States, um, is possible. Now, this is crazy, but almost in a faith move rather than with reason. This is why Netanyahu and his cabinet have pushed for 7 fronts. They're fighting wars on 7 fronts. And the ultimate thing is to drag in Iran and tempting it by outrage after outrage. And so this escalation ladder that started in April Fool's Day, ironically, when Netanyahu openly committed an act of war by shooting missiles from an Israeli F-35 fighter bomber into the embassy in Damascus and the Iranian embassy, and that is Iranian territory. So if you destroy if you destroys anyone's embassy, according to the I think it's called the Vienna Law or something after World War II, that is an act of war. And he knew it and he made it because he wanted to provoke Iran to fight. So Iran did in around 13th of 14th of April, a lot of time zones between here and there. Um, they made a demonstration and they warned the Israelis after sundown on Sabbath. They made a demonstration to show that they could reach out and touch them. Well, the Israelis did a very minor reaction with another big threat. Well, we're going to really hit you hard. And then they only did in country some of the non-Persian ethnic groups that are rebelling did a little stuff with some drones and maybe blew up one Russian radar station. And then, so that was it. But then, so that was the last time that we had this kind of, okay, where we are now. But unfortunately, since then, it's this whole story of escalations by crossing red lines that people have never crossed before. And the problem with that is that, yeah, you cross a few lines, like you hit the embassy in Iran, which is outright war crime, cause for war. Iran was in its rights to strike back, killed a bunch of Iranian soldiers and embassy people and some high-ranking generals that were under the safety of being in an embassy was not respected. So then what's happened is every time, so Netanyahu did a campaign of assassinations of leaders. And that's what happened over the May, June, July, and August. And so in October 1st, especially when um, Nasrallah, Syed Hassan Nasrallah, who has been the leader of the Hezbollah uh, movement since 1992, when he took over from someone who was martyred. Um, he was killed, and then also Hania before him, the head of Hamas, who was active, very active in trying to get a ceasefire to save thousands of people, civilians that are being murdered and starving to death every day now in what's the rubble pile of the Gaza Strip. And so we have a full-blown genocide going on that you won't hear much about in the U.S. press because it's rather influenced by AIPAC and Israeli interests. So, but if you go on the alternative media, if you go on X, you will see a lot of things that you will not see in your evening news that are going on and are important for your future to know about because your country, America, is going to be dragged into this, and it could go nuclear because Israel now it's out of the bag with the leaked. Uh, some people leaked the top secret stuff that Israel gave to America and other allies, which now makes it confirmed that Israel is a nuclear, though rogue nuclear state. And so that they build bombs and they have atomic weapons. Some people think as few as 90, some people think as many as 300. Um, it all happened in the 1960s. And so, when you're the only nuclear power in a region, it's a very destabilizing situation. What's more, it's a lesser evil is if you have responsible powers in the region also as nuclear powers, so that you do not do what the Soviet Union and the United States successfully didn't do throughout the long 45 years of the first Cold War, did not, they had mutually assured destruction. Nuclear weapons were deterrents. They were there to scare you straight to never use them. But that's all gone now. Even not with the Russians and the Chinese, but with the Americans and the British and the French. They're kind of openly talking about that we can use these weapons. I mean, why do we have all these weapons if we don't use them? Said Madeleine Albright one day, shocked the people in the 90s when she said it. But now people can say that. And it's like, yeah, why not? Uh, They will go with open eyes into these catastrophes, said Stormberger. You are those people unless you start opening your eyes and look what's happening. And that's kind of what I try to do with my Hogue Prophecy reports and being on this show. It's that Paul's graciously allowed me to be on and see you all. And these are the things that are important. And so on October 1st, Iran hit hard, a harder demonstration with about 200 missiles or more. I watched it live just by chance. It was happening, and I saw the whole thing before it could be edited. And they they pounded Nevatim and Tel Nof airstrips. They were pounded. There were at least 32 hits on Nevatim. And people, the Israeli press tried to pretend. Well, not the press; they were actually like Haaretz and other some of the best press out there are in Israel. Like Haaretz is a great source of finding out what's really going on there. Jerusalem Post, you get to know what the right-leaning view is, which is important to know. You have to read everything, see everything. So, if you only just watch and listen to your own side of any issue, you're going to be half blind. And there'll be no three dimensions to your thoughts because with one eye, it's all two-dimensional. Good, bad. No third element of depth in your thinking. So anyway, the Iranians took the big hit, and the Israelis are saying, now we're going to really strike. We're going to strike hard. We're going to hit you. And it was kind of feeling to me from the way I was looking at it, is that they were going to try to do the ultimate decapitation of the Iranian leadership. Blow up all the leadership centers of the Islamic guards, try to take out Khamenei, the supreme leader, and his council and do what they've been doing since April Fools, as being foolish enough to think that decapitating countries that have been in resistance with you since 1948, and just hopefully wishing that, and not knowing what even I know, and I don't even live there, but it's very available that whenever you're picked in Hamas as a leader, or in Hezbollah, or in Iran, or in Iraq, these are the alliance of the resistance against the Zionist invasion, as they see it, of their regions. That hasn't happened in 2,000 years. And so you you cannot decapitation. There'll always be other people to step up, and many of them will be younger, and maybe the people you're killing are the moderates. You might get more hardline people coming, and that's the result of an escalation of more extreme enemies, that if you negotiated with them, you would not have that happening. So, but what then happened, is it came. I was thinking it would come before the election. I thought it was crazy to come before the election, but it did. I thought it would be after the election, because then you're really kind of sticking it to your enabler, and so. But what I've come to find out is, through the leak, is that they were going to just do a military target demonstration, not do the decapitation, and that's how Biden well, that's not Biden. Biden's just sitting there drooling. I mean, that's what Sullivan and Blinken are the leaders of the United States right now, since the coup that took Biden out of the election. And he's just it's an ironic thing, because I said he never finished his term. I never expected it would be kind of like this, but in a way I think it is. That coup basically ended his term and turned him into a lame duck 3 months before he should have been a lame duck. And the ironically, he is a Scorpio. I know Scorpios, I am one. That he's taking his revenge by getting on TV just when Kamala Harris was supposed to have a big, all the TV networks were on her. Suddenly, they all pulled away from her, and it was Joe Biden walking in live into the press conference, which he had not done in nearly 4 years, and did an impromptu press thing where basically he was saying, "Oh yeah, I just want to say I really support Kamala Harris. She has been in everything I've done in these 3.5 years. She's signed on to everything I've done." Um, and so it was his tricky way of, because she's trying to say, no, I'm different. And there's a lot of pressure about her saying, well, all these wonderful ideas that you did you do word solids about. Why haven't you done them in 3.5 years? Why didn't you pressure Biden, fight with him, and get it right? So, and then here's saying, oh yeah, she signed on to everything. So it's a bit of that's the reprisal, because he was pissed off about what happened. And when you piss off a Scorpio, he does not, he might have not many brain cells left, but never do something to a Scorpio. Linda Goodman said this in her book, wonderful books on astrology. It, beware if you've done something to a Scorpio where he just, with his plutonic stare, his inscrutable and penetrating eyes says, I'll remember this. Don't ever do that. Don't ever get to a point with a Scorpio where they go, I'll remember this, because they will, and something will happen to you. So, this is the more reptilian Scorpios. I like to think I'm one of the Phoenix, because I had to be, because I have double Scorpio rising and sun, 5 degrees, sun in all in 12th house, the ascendant conjoined with Venus in Scorpio in its fall, and Saturn in Scorpio. So, when you have a chart like that, you have to listen to the planets of your higher nature, or you just don't make it. So I've come through the gauntlet of it. But I do understand. When I did Biden's astrology 4 years ago, it was like I understood, because he has a lot of stuff in the 12th house as well. So is Hillary Clinton. Actually, Hillary Clinton has a very similar chart to mine, so I get her. I get where that goes wrong too. So because she's also Scorpio, early period, almost cusp to Libra like I am. And so the the Israelis attacked. I watched it. I watched it happening a few days ago. What amazed me in first impression was see how they did it is they launched 100 jets, um, and they weren't going to fly over Iranian airspace. What they did is they go over Iraq without permission, but what are the Iraqis going to do? They go over Iraq, and as close to the eastern part of Iraq, that's when they launch their missiles out of Iraqi airspace and hit targets in Iran. Now, I've been saying a long time from my sources that, and it feels right. That's how I do my medium work. I read the world, and people say a lot of things, but I've noticed and took note of when this thing happens. It has this, oh, that's happening. Oh, this isn't happening. That's happening. I don't know how I do it, but it's, don't ask a millipede to how he walks on 500 legs on either side of his body. It's just like, it, my job is to get out of the way and be available. That's all I do. And then all this stuff happens. And it's usually been pretty accurate, about 80%. So anyway, they launched their missiles, but they were running up against Iran for the last several months has been stockpiling with Russian crews S-400 anti-ballistic, anti-missile, anti-aircraft, the top of the line of missile of air defense on the planet, and also S-500s from Russia. They are the best. I mean, the Russians are making now the best weapons and the best jets and everything, and our stuff is being exposed to being kind of decrepit and profit-based rather than purpose-based, because war is a profit uh, idea in the United States. In Russia, it's a purpose. It's the war industries are owned by the state. There's a lot of good interaction between private enterprise in Russia about it, but everybody knows because in Russia, even the people in the war industry are patriots rather than businessmen trying to make a buck out of war. I really question the patriotism of a lot of the billionaires that have made heck of a lot of money murdering people all over the world for the last 30 years. Um, it's a racket. And it's proven because if they love the country, would they create stuff that breaks down all the time? And because you build stuff in America and war business to break down all the time, because then the whole life cycle of anything that is bought at the top price will keep giving you money because they build them in such a ways that they're doing too many things, or they're probably cook you eggs while you're flying and shooting at somebody, and it just breaks. It's too complicated. And the Russians realize simple is good. Only have a specific purpose for anything that you build. Don't make it have be burdened to do everything. Be a jet fighter, a fighter bomber. No, you have jet fighters and fighter bombers as separate, not the F-35, which is trying to do everything. And, all the F-35s on the planet Earth right now, 3/4 of them at any one time are in the shop being repaired. They suck. And they're the most expensive jets ever made. So a lot of people made a lot of profit, but their idea of purpose really sucks. And it's all been exposed by the fighting that's happened. And what's also happened is the rest of the world that is getting tired of being sanctioned, using the US dollar not as a thing to bring wealth and stability to the world, but a thing to bring sanctions and chaos to the world. Well, they're all moving to the Chinese and the Russians to get their weapons, and which are made for a purpose. And so, Israel has bought into all the American expensive weapons. And so anyway, they were smart not to. I mean, next time if they make this attack. So anyway, the attack came, and I was watching how you could see the missiles coming horizontally over the skyline of Tehran. And so you could hear they were shooting and doing things, and then you see like a whole cloud of missiles going straight across, and then suddenly it's like going pop, 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 and they disappeared. Literally shot them all down efficiently. And I was saying, wow. Now Iran has also some very well-made anti-aircraft stuff, but what happened is the Israelis talked about how they hit 20 targets. Well, maybe the missiles got there, but most of them were shot down. And there was just only 2 to 4 Iranians killed. And there were some areas. There was a big fire that could have been the missile place that makes drones and missiles outside of Tehran. It looked like they did some damage there. And I also saw some footage that was snuck out of Iran in the same area, and some of the stuff hit. But compared to what they did in October 1st, it's nothing. It's a scratch. So I keep monitoring, and when I look at the satellite links of the bases they claim to have hit, I don't see much of anything damaged. So I can't say the same for what I saw at Nevitim from space and Tel Nov from space. So the good news is that the supreme leader and the Iranians people, you almost feel it. After the missiles hit that very same night, the airport reopened again, and it was just an hour of stuff, and then it was like everything opened up again like it never happened, and it was almost the defiance was, we're just going on with our lives. This is something, because they're dealing with a nuclear power, which is often intimated indirectly that they would bomb Iran to the Stone Age like that if they felt like doing it, and not mention how. But everybody knows this is the biggest open secret in nuclear deterrence across the planet is Israel is a rogue nuclear state, breaking all the treaties. And that's now kind of officially out of the bag because of this leak, because they talked about, well, then they might go nuclear next time with their nukes and stuff. So that was not supposed to be shared with the general public who vote them in, who finance their campaigns, who they're supposed to serve first. So we're in a period. I agree with Alexander Mercouris. It was what I was feeling, and then I heard him voice it the following day. One of my best sources from the Duran, a must watch for all you to go online. YouTube, watch the Duran, Duran. They're some of my finest sources for many years. Always very accurate, rational. And anyway, so Mercouris kind of voiced what I was feeling was that, okay, we got a little respite now. And this whole escalating issue that Netanyahu started, now he can kind of say, well, I did this and now it's over. I've done that. This is all I'm going to do. I'm not going to do anymore. So the escalation for now is put in abeyance, but I think it will resume just like before, just like in the April 1st to April 14th thing. And so because Netanyahu needs a war. The the Israeli army is losing lots of wounded and not so many dead, but that's because Israeli armed forces has one of the finest triage rescue of wounded on battlefields in the world, to their credit. So, but there's lots of guys getting wounded and seriously, and a lot of it is not going well with the incursion. And so, once again, the curse of Netanyahu. I'll explain astrologically how far this curse goes in a moment here. I'll start here. I call it the curse of Netanyahu. He he wanted this war. He every time he tries to go in, he gets more and more engaged in wars of attrition, which cannot be won by a country of 7 million Jews and 2 million Arabs, Israelis. It cannot be won. When you're fighting a nation like Iran of 90 million people, when you've made hostile to you 441 million Arabs, um, it's crazy. And short of some divine presence that could make it all magically like the Bible, the armies turning to ash and all that, uh, that's all they've got, a spiritual dogmatic hope, not a reality as so far. So, so what it's gone back to is now he's got a full-scale war of attrition in Lebanon with Hezbollah, which are much better dug in, and he's also the villages that the Israeli forces have taken, they've blown them to bits, just like the neighborhoods of Gaza. So it's become also now a Lebanese genocide. So it's going to sometime, maybe at the end of the year, maybe early. When I look at this, at first, when I was writing about this in this most recent thing I sent on the 21st of October to my readers of a prophecy report, I found myself in it, and I wrote about it. It's like myself, I did more than I've usually done in my prophecy work. Um, I don't talk about much, but I often people think that I'm just predicting things that I agree with. No, I half of the things I'm predicting from my oracular instinct go against me personally. Oh no, that can't happen. But I have remembered and taken stock. I date tag everything I do and write it down. And I can go back if memory fails me to look at this and go, yeah, okay, that happened. Okay, I didn't like it, I didn't want that, but it happened. So um, I had this feeling that this whole thing my personal feeling, not my oracular experience, was this is all just going to come in ahead before or around the election, and it could end up with everything exploding in the Middle East and being a real mess. But the oracular part of me was saying, oh, this is going to be a long war. How? Can't be. How can it be a long war? It's going to be a long war. And then I started doing the astrology. And I could see what's going on with Israel and on all these fronts and with Iran. It could last into the last half of 2026. It could be that long. So now, and so that's what's, but it's hard to go through it verbally, but you can see, and it's all about this gripping conjunction. Uranus is transiting through the region of Taurus right now in its detriment, in its fall. So that means the ruler of Aquarius, the air sign, the sign of humanitarianism, revolutionary ideas, freedom, individual sovereignty en masse, is in the worst, it's in its opposition planet, Taurus. So it's as far removed from where it likes to be than it can ever be when it's going around the zodiac. So it means literally revolution now in the Taurian earth, grounded, muddy, rocky, resistant, stubborn place is literally revolution turned against revolutionaries. It's like is why the deep state has been so efficiently over this long transit, which I think began in 2011. A revolution, humanitarian advances in revolution has been turned on its head and by the establishment, by the establishment having a revolution in censorship, in shadow banning, in um, Citizens United, and where corporations become equal people to you, only you don't have the trillions of dollars they have to buy politicians. And so, literally so in this dark time of Uranus being in its fall, its detriment, it's specifically right now having a huge impact on this end time of one American age into the other. This is Capricorn, 29 degrees. Um, Pluto is now, and it should be with the Israeli birth sun sign, should be in a wonderful trine. And Uranus being conjoined with that sign should be something very harmonious. But I'm seeing it's I'm few astrologers really go here because they kind of get stuck in trine, good, square, bad, Saturn, grim reaper, uh, rather than Saturn. He limits your illusions. He's actually your friend. If you love truth. But if you want to live in a dream, an illusion, you'll hate Saturn because he's always compassionately throwing you out of it and saying, no, no, that's all a dream. Why don't you live life as it really is for you? And so I'm kind of being a heterodox with astrology. I'm starting to say things like, don't just call oppositions that when planets are opposed to each other. Don't just call them that because that's just half of it. If you have opposition, you have attraction. So, it is about finding harmony. These are the points in your chart, whether you're a nation or a person, where you're trying to find a balance. I would call it balancer opposer. And I would call squares not negative, but growing points in the soul that keep reminding you about them because these are the places you need to grow. And it hurts if you ignore it. So face it and grow. And we're here to grow. And so that's there. Now, and then you have trines. You know, one of Kamala Harris's biggest problems in her astrology is she has lots of trines. And now that shouldn't be a problem. That means everything comes easy to you. Yeah, it does come easy to her. Like, here's a person who couldn't even win a single vote in 2020 during the Democratic primaries, who in 140 seconds, Tulsi Gabbard deconstructed her whole game with truth bombs in the first debate. And rather than face it, the next morning people were talking to her on, well, what do you think about Tulsi Gabbard coming after you? And she just said something smarmy and didn't answer the question, which that's one of the few consistent things she is. She never answers the questions. She moves, she averts them, and she's not very good. She's not a good politician. She might have been a workable, good lawyer, a liar, as my teacher called lawyers. Oh yes, let's go get the liar. Um, but she hasn't. Her political skills are just not there, and she's very insecure. That laugh is a classic psychological tell for somebody who is laughing too hard because they are insecure. Oh, everything's fine. You know, so so the so yeah, things come easy for you, Kamala. You can lose, and you can then say, "Oh, it's because I'm a top line candidate that Tulsi went for me. More people will go for me because I'm a top line candidate." And then you'll just gloss over the fact that a few days later, you left the campaign and you didn't even get a single vote. But you have all these trines. And these trines can be very helpful. Out of the blue, you've got the kingmaker, Barack Obama, just like the queenmaker, Hillary Clinton, who are your two mentors. Here steps Barack Obama. He pulls you out of oblivion, political oblivion, and he picks you to be the vice president. And he forces Biden to say yes. He gets all these people that were campaigning, still campaigning, to promise them posts in the cabinet. So they abandoned the Democratic voters. The primary was a farce, and it was just Biden left standing, well, hiding in his basement most of the campaign because of his dementia. But you know, the trine worked for you. You got the Peter principle going right here. You are advancing, and now you're at the threshold because of the coup that took Biden out, which you had a little part in. Now you are the candidate for the Democratic Party who never got voted for. No primary did you test yourself in. You just dropped from base one to home run without an effort. That's what too many trines in your chart will do for you. Everything's too easy. You don't earn it. And when you don't earn it, you don't gain the wisdom from mistakes and things that could make you a good leader. I mean, she's got generally a great chart, but you know, a chart is like a car. You know, it shows you, it's like the Kelly Blue Book of astrology as your body mind vehicle. But if the soul has got an affliction which shouldn't be an affliction, too many trines, where everything's just easy, then you never earn anything until you reach too far. And I think this is what's going to happen to her. Uh, she's out of her depth. She's completely alienated men with what she's doing. The men are leaving in droves. This is a soccer moms for John Kerry in 2004 with Bush. This is the soccer mom effect, an orders of magnitude much worse, because she's you know, now if Tulsi Gabbard hadn't been kicked out of the Democratic Party, it might have been Tulsi Gabbard that Trump was going against, and he might have lost from her, because a lot of men are pulled to her strength and pulled to her femininity with authority, not, you know, I mean, I personally was turned off to her during the first debate she had with Trump. Very dumb of her to be doing this, where they have the camera with her on one side and Trump talking, and she's making, you know, all these little things that tell you, as a man, if I go out on a date with somebody like that, that's over. You know, this is just like a real turnoff. Someone like, yeah, 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 you know, it's just I don't fall in love with cartoons called women. I fall in love with women, and that's just how I feel as a man. And I think it's a good time now for men to kind of remind people with all this woke emasculation stuff that's going on from the left that men are rebelling. I'm rebelling as a man. I can't vote for that, and I'm not alone. And so, kind of, I'm going to make my official prediction for our audience. You're one of the first audiences are going to hear, but everybody's waiting for it, coast to coast and other places. My official prediction, which I'm currently writing out for my readers, but you'll hear it before my readers do. Um, I've been, my oracular sense rather shocked me again because I think, you know, I, how is this happening? But I started feeling when just before in September, early September, just before early balloting started, I started to feel before people were talking about it, I say, I don't think men are going to vote for her. I think she's really like turning off male voters. And of course, being men, they're not going to gossip about it. Nothing wrong with gossiping, but they're, men don't gossip like that. No. Well, I'm not going to vote for him. No, you should. You should. No. A man goes, hmm, and then he keeps it to himself. Yes, dear. Yes, yes, well, I'll vote for her or something like that, and goes off and votes for Trump. you know, and it's a private issue, voting. Some and then the worst thing is, I would say, if I were Trump, I would say, hey, keep Barack coming and shaming black men publicly and openly. Let Barack's wife doing the same. Just keep doing that. Go to every state and do that. You're helping us so much because, when you shame men, it shows you don't respect their opinion, and that your opinion has to be theirs. That's a turnoff. And so men have just about had enough of this. And then here you have Barack Obama sitting there, and it's the first time he even talks in blackish words like, well, you got to start working with the brothers. He never used that before, and I can remember. Well, the brothers, and he's standing there, he's giving a dressing down. I'm surprised that one of those guys didn't send him out of the room in a rather violent way. But then the Secret Service are there, but or to say, but they were just sitting there going, they were listening, being respectful. And I said, boy, those guys are going to go straight and vote for Trump. And 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 the black women too are doing it. They're just, they're sick and tired of the Democrats pretend leadership, pretending to be massa. No, you are our property, politically speaking, you African American folk. We are massa, new massa. Obama is a new massa. And now he's dressing down his political slaves. And this is not me talking. This is the feedback I'm getting from a lot of black people about what's going on, and I'm with them. I mean, it's just like I think woke for white people is the same thing. That's why I'm always kidding them. And anyway, so it's not working. I mean, God, she was getting booed in a huge sports center because everybody had been told that Beyonce was going to come in Houston, and it turned out she wasn't. It wasn't they were saying we're going to have a concert, so everybody wanted to go to the concert, and then Kamala was going to say a few words, but it ended up they all went there, and it was just to see Kamala, and they were booing thousands of people, and she's like on. Jesus, do you really want sometimes you just got to know when a certain role in the world is not yours to have, and it's good to know. It's like you know, I couldn't be a NFL football player if I wanted to. I got as far as Pop Warner, Junior All-American. Yeah, that's it. But I saved my brain. So not too many knockouts. So, um, so I started feeling he's not just going to win by electoral college like he did in 2016. I was like, are you kidding? He's going to win by a landslide? And like the oracle is like going, mm-hmm. And I'm going, wow, I don't know if that's going to happen. God, my God, this administration has literally brought 10 million people into across the border, the southern border, and they're bankrupting FEMA to the point that it can't actually serve real American citizens in the west of North Carolina from hurricane damage, because all the money is going to putting millions of illegal aliens up in hotels and other places, giving them driver's license, giving them lots of money to buy cars and have driver's license and all that so they can flash it in front of people for the voting. And it's out. The bag is the cat's out of the bag. There's going to be an attempt, as I foresaw in 2020, to try to cheat. And I'm sorry to say it, it's coming from the Democratic leadership. And by the way, cheating with voting is a felony. So a lot of people are more savvy to it this time than the last time. A lot of people are kind of overwhelmed by being sequestered in a plague that the cure actually killed more people than the plague. And so the what I think is happening is, if my prediction is this, if you count the legal voters, the legal ballots in 50 states and territories, you will find that Donald J. Trump won a landslide and got over 300 electoral college votes. He only needs like 270. It's like I said in 2020, I said he's going to win the electoral college, but I won't be able to um, objectively prove it like I did in 2000, because I caused quite a ruckus when I said, no, Al Gore won Florida, which meant he won legally being president over George W. Bush. And people back then were saying, oh, come on, you're a sore loser. No, I'm not a sore loser. I'm just saying this is that recount should have happened. Well, I found out a few years later that it did. A year after, because all the ballots are in Tallahassee in some warehouse. All those dangling chads were waiting to be counted. Oh, please count us. And all lonely in some warehouse somewhere. And they had a nonpartisan group of people funded to do all the counting, to do what Al Gore cut off by choking and not letting the Supreme Court, moving it back to the Florida State Supreme Court to give them what they asked. That's why they denied it, because we need to know how you're going to count it. Well, we don't know how. Well, then don't bother us. Go back to the state and get the count and come back to us. So, but Al Gore got some deep state people pressured him, and he just decided to choke. And he literally choked. And if he had, it shows he would have been a lousy leader, because he chokes. I mean, this is a time where you're going to see if he can really be a leader under pressure, and pressure from support groups and all. But if he's single pointed with what is right as a leader, he'll go for it. And he didn't. And if he did, he would have won by 76 votes. It doesn't matter if it's one vote more than the other. He legally is the elected president of 2000. So I got to have it proven that my instincts, oracular instincts, were onto something. And so what I'm saying again, in these years, many years later, 24 years later, um, if you went and if you had everybody recount all 50 states of 2020's warehouses with ballots, and were able then to look and throw out the ballots which were fraudulent, which had no address, which had not the things they need, they throw them out. I contend, because the feeling is often so accurate, what I do, that you would find that Trump had won in 2020 the Electoral College. Now, here I am again. Now, people go, oh, you just support, you just want to keep your streak going, you bastard. Um, no, you know what? I'd like to be proven wrong. And if you, Mr. and Mrs. America, who are okay with your side winning with a lot of suspicious ballot fraud going on, wouldn't you like to know if you legally won, truthfully won? What does that say of you that you're okay with a disputed election across the states that you won? Wouldn't you feel a little feeling of, this isn't moral. This isn't right. Let's really, I want to know if I lost. I want to know if I won. And it would be a burden off my chest and my shoulders to know that Trump really did lose to Biden. And I would say, well, I'm good with that. I was wrong, broke the streak. Thank God, It's it's a pressure to have such a long streak since 1968 going. I'd like to lose, frankly. It would be a relief. When I thought I lost in 2016, I was on George Noory's Coast to Coast, and I was watching myself being ecstatic. I lost, I finally lost. Thank God, such a pressure. And then George kind of settled me down across 20 million people across North America. And he said, well, John, don't count your chickens before they're hatched. There's millions of votes happening over in California. There's lots of votes coming. You may get that popular vote thing. And of course, it was a weird year because I ended up predicting in my President Trump Trump for President astrological predictions book, my most accurate book, which I wrote in 2015, latter half of 2015, published in winter solstice, even before the primary started in 2016. I um I said that at the time I was writing it, there were 21 candidates running at the opening of the debates and all that. And I said, if he passes through all the hoops he'll have to pass to get to the Republican convention. If he wins, he has the best astrology I've ever seen for election night. Just absolutely Mr. Luck. I mean, he has remarkable astrology. With luck, with his North Node, with his ascendant, the very powerful ascendant with Mars conjoined, and all these trines with Mars, which means, for better or worse, um, this man is a unique man in that look at how he bounces back. You give him lawfare and he doesn't get to jail. You try to arrest him. You try to break into his house and he's still going. He gets stronger. He gets more support. You even shoot him, and it gives him more and more support. And that's because if ever there was a man to become the 47th president, dealing with the dangers in the Kabbalah for that, the one opinion is that it means dead man walking. But the other way to say it is a person of non-substance for the job. So it could be an empty woman walking if it's Kamala Harris, who's just going to be in service of the deep state, whatever they want to do with her. And so, but now I'm going to write about it. I was just starting to write about it for the show, is that his Kabbalah being the 47th president he is the dead man walking in the attention of his enemies. And when you read what the vibratory thing is, it sounds like how Trump has walked out of all these attempts through lawfare, through assassination, through all these things to stop him, and how because he's single-pointed with that Aries Mars, no, Leo Mars, sorry, in the Leo rising, powerful Leo ascendant. So that's how you reach out in the world. That's the mask you put on for the world. That is, um, it's if ever there was somebody, because I tell you, this danger, this threat of his life and limb is going to, if he's president, will last for 4 years. These attempts on his life are not over with his winning the election. They've only just begun because the things that he's wanting to do are really an affront to the powers that be in the deep state. I mean, this time, he's got Bobby Kennedy who's going to make the big pharma go down, with all the bad drugs and unhealthy food and all that that's killing the United States health-wise. We're dying from that more than wars. And Bobby Kennedy has been an expert in that, a lawyer fighting that all his adult life. And he's going to end up running FDA. And he's going to change all of that out. You got Elon Musk coming in as a czar for efficiency. He's not getting paid. He's doing it as a patriot, just donating his time. But the man is brilliant in how he cleans out workers and situations that don't are just not doing their job. And so he's going to go across because this is a power the president has that most people never use because they're part of the grift. But Trump realized that, I can shrink the government. I have the power. I can hire and fire, the employees. I have the power to do it. So he's going to have must go through all the different ministries of our nation and cut about two-thirds of them out and cut all the riffraff and all the lifer bureaucrats that aren't doing anything. And so there's going to be a big reduction of a lot of dead weight in our government. And that will also go with probably a lot of people in the CIA getting fired. He's also going to, he was talking with Joe Rogan. That's a must watch, those 3 hours he was on recently with Joe Rogan. It's the first time actually, because it was only through Bobby Kennedy talking about their private conversations that I found out that how much he is. Yeah, I made this mistake, this mistake, this mistake, a lot of mistakes. I was naive. I walked into it. I trusted people too much, and they screwed me. And I've learned my lesson. And so I heard it from Bobby's mouth, but I heard it on Joe Rogan this morning from his own. He's just at ease with him. At ease, and yeah, I did. I screwed up. And then he says, I sometimes wonder why people get so push buttons with me, and Joe Rogan being the kind of man that you just can't talk BS with him. He's graceful with it, but well, I wonder why. And he says, well, I know why. Well, what is it? He says, you talk a lot of crazy shit. And Trump laughed, yeah, I do. You're right. I do talk a lot of crazy shit. It's a game changer if people watch it because it's just like you're seeing this other side of Trump that's in his astrology that's he has so many layers. And the best way to deal with Trump with his ups and downs is appeal to the angels of his better Gemini nature. And if he's president, I will finish my third and final Trump book in the Trump trilogy. I I delayed it for 4 years because I didn't know if he was coming back. Would have been in the second term. Was President Trump Predictions, it's called. And it'll come out, but it's really going to be a different book now. It's more about not so much about Trump, but about how the American people can deal with him and how they can help him and how it's because of his astrological nature and his human design, your hate will just bound back on you. It's very strange. It's unique. I haven't seen it in astrology and in stuff very, very often, but the guy has this, he's innocent in so many ways deep down. And the more you hate him, the more you destroy yourself. He doesn't take it in. It's mirrored right back at you. It's an occult mystery. And he's not even aware of it because he's innocent of it. But it's in the astrology. And so I remember when he was first elected, I was telling people this in my little village. It's a very blue part of the island here in Washington State. the north part is pretty red on Whidbey Island. And so when the election happened, a lot of people know that I made these predictions. So for the weeks after the election, I'm going into the Star Store and the other grocery stores and stuff, and everybody's grabbing me saying, "What do you think about what happened?" And I said, well, and I would tell them about, well, the way to deal with Trump is not to be negative with him, is to give him love. And God, you should see what happened to people. I said that they almost fell on the floor in a fetal position. They're like, I can't, I hate him. And I said, what? You're so overwrought. Now I can never love a man like that. Well, Jesus could. So says the Bible, you know. Maybe the Bible's full of it, but love thy neighbor as thyself, love your enemies, your enemies need love. And in this case, he thrives to love. He'll listen to you. He'll then listen to you if you're fair with him. He loves the astrology shows that he can take my God, this guy's taken all kinds of hits that you would never tolerate in your lives, ladies and gentlemen. But it's water off a duck, water off the ducktail of his or a ducktail of his front hair, It, he so it doesn't work. And you're just making yourself sick. You're making your soul sick by eating up all this hate because it's just coming back at you. So it's not a solution to the Trump problem. The solution is you've got to do something that's going against your whole reality and your ego, and that is be loving in your criticism. He'll listen. He's a transactional guy. He's not a Republican or a Democrat. He's the only party he's ever been is the party of Trump as an individual. And if the Democrats had opened their doors to him, he'd be a Democratic president. He even said early on when the Republicans weren't doing anything for him, they were kind of giving him no love, and he wanted to do that big road repair of the whole infrastructure of the United States. He openly said, it really surprised me. He said, you know what? I just like to make deals. That's who I am. And if I can't make deals with the Republicans, I'll make deals with the Democrats, even though I'm a Republican. Let's do it. And so he tried to get Schumer and these people to get on his side and give us a deal. And it's transactional. So the good side about being transactional, it means that it's not a zero-sum issue. We win everything and you lose. Transactional is you give me something, I give you something, and we both profit. So, all this bad mouthing MSNBC and all these people are doing about transactional thing, I think it has a virtue to it. It's like bartering and selling. Both profit, both get something good. I mean, the whole world, I'd rather have the world more transactional than illogical like it is now. That'll lead us to World War III, and the next World War will be with sticks and stones, of a handful of us surviving. Half blind from all the ozone holes that we blew into the ozone layer so that when you're out in the sky, you actually get cataracts from radiation. So you're half blind with sticks and stones and naked. Good luck with that. If you just can't give love to other people, that's where it ends. So now there's certainly also a lot of, so anyway, my official prediction is that he's going to win by a landslide, but we will then see to what extent the fraudulent voting has happened, because if it's tight, it's not because he didn't win. It's because there's a whole lot of millions of fraudulent votes been stuffed into the margin or stuffed into the computer with a push of the button. So that's the two scenarios. And if the fraudulent voting succeeds, then our union of states will break up and we may descend into war and strife that hasn't been seen since the Civil War. And it will make this transition out of this sick lifestyle of being a military industrial superpower, because the only way you can do that all over the world is you can only perpetuate chaos, discord, sanctioning, violence, and war. Peace is bad for American business. So change your businesses before you destroy yourselves, because that's where we're going. And it's a harsh thing to say, but this is where I have to play Jeremiah. Repent. Remember yourselves as Americans. We have gone astray. We have gone astray like any addict. We are a nation of addicts. We are addicted to poisonous food, and military industrial complex is our major industry in the world, and the world is sick of it. That is why last week there was that incredible summit in Kazan, the Republic of Turkestan, which is part of the provinces and autonomous nations of the Russian Federation that live in peace. That a beautiful city. I've not been there, but it's beautiful. It is a Muslim city, but with very beautiful Christian egg onion dome churches as well. They live in peace. Russia has one of the largest Muslim populations in the Muslim world, and Christians and Muslims live in respect of each other, tolerance of each other. So at that kind of place, in the middle of a war, with NATO hiding behind as their proxy Ukraine, 86 nations came to watch, and I think 32 were closer to actually, like next year, they'll probably join the BRICS. BRICS stands for the core 5 members that are kind of overseeing its creation. That means Brazil, Russia, BR, India, also now Iran. It's also part of the BRICS. China is the C, and S for South Africa. It's the final of the 5. They are creating a new currency. They even show the model of what it'll look like as a dollar bill. Rather pretty. The BRICS dollar. And the BRICS alliance is already, its GDP with all the countries that are already in it is far superior and larger than the Great Seven, the G7. That's what the G's for, the Great Seven, the great economic powerhouses, mostly of the West. There's more cash and money and economy going on in the BRICS, even now at its inception. And they're moving away from the US dollar. Not because they want to, they have to. And now they have a choice. And the whole way the BRICS is setting up is using dollars as political tools is not allowed. If you do that, you can't be in the BRICS. So the whole structure is communion, stability. We'll stop telling you how to live your lives in your sovereign nations. That's for your sovereign nations people to work out. We will respect whatever you are, but we will not tolerate you coming into our country and telling us how to change and do this like America is going. People are sick of it in the world. And, only 17% of the planet's population of human beings belongs to the collective West. The vast majority, the global majority, as they're being called now in this new era, they're all for individual sovereignty of collective nations. This is very Aquarian age. This is what the Aquarian age is all about. It's the human mass of people, all equally sovereign and equally unique. The political mass of countries, all respected as sovereign and equally unique in the ways they evolve and work out their problems. And then people are given the time and the space and the ability to enrich themselves to because that's another thing. The more wealthy the world, not just a handful of us, but the more that everyone has a share of prosperity in the world, is the best solution to so many of the world's ills, to poverty, to disease, to war. So much of that is caused by people being impoverished, people being denied their dreams. So one of the ways you change that is through economy. And I will stress here that despite all the great changes of history, um, this if you start with an economic reform or change as the foundation, you are doing with the BRICS something as big to our future for the better that hunter-gatherers back in prehistoric times did when they got tired of living off the land scraps, and they were able to cultivate wheat for the first time, domesticate wild animals like dogs and cats and horses, so they could use them to tow the fields and build. They're starting to see that not wandering the raw earth all the time is going to really get us beyond being 8,000 people. Most of the human race has only had a population for the majority of its existence, over 1 million years, of about 8,000 people in their different evolutions. But so you have stability, you have a home, not just a cave that you randomly come in and out of. You have shelter from weather. You have then more success and goods, and now you want to sell them to people, and then they have goods and they want to sell you things. And so this first economic agricultural change into being civilized, which civilization, civilized has gotten the wrong meaning over time. It's like, oh, you're cultured, you're higher class, you're civilized, you're not a barbarian, you're not a monster or a jungle. Civilized means you have civic, you're living in cities. You're living in permanent structures with permanent farm fields because it makes you more stable and profitable. And then you create an economic system, values of bartering and selling and that's how you create currencies. And that's how we do something which I agree with Ayn Rand on this. One of the most amazing things that America gave to the world was the ability to make wealth out of nothing. That's what capital is. It's all from our heads. Capitalism is is that we think a dream. This is very Aquarian age, because Aquarian has the two swiggly lines when the water bearer Aquarius is pouring out the water, and more mystical art of astrology like GETTR used to create perfectly. You see the water pouring, and then it becomes air, mist. It's a more subtle element, because the Aquarian age is about subtlety. It's about ideas that are as real as solid things, like Bitcoin, math becoming value, just math becoming a new gold standard. So Aquarian age. So atmosphere, electricity, invisible powers, atomic power, um, um, quantum physics, all of this is the Aquarian age. Um, you know, instant transactions between person to person on other sides of the planet, which ultimately will be the way economy is done. And within another 150 years, when we're totally into the Aquarian age and out of the vestiges of the Piscean age with centralization of everything, the world will be decentralized. And ultimately, there won't be a global government, but there will be a kind of way we live where the ultimate unit of sovereignty is not a nation, but one human being, all human beings. I'm writing a lot about this. I finally had the chance. Hopefully next year I can start it and finish it in 2 years while I'm doing all the other things, is my book of things to come. which is prophecies I've been thinking about since I was in high school. And I'm pulling them all out, and they are all about ideas, taking themes of interest in humanity, love, death, philosophy, religion, economy, war, peace, space exploration, UFOs, extraterrestrials, all of that. And I am writing essays. Since it's why I make my living writing essays now as my day job. I'm going to write essays, which are chapter length, and that will, in a book that's about 400 pages, a classic size, normal book, that will sometimes take some of these themes, evolve them a few centuries, a few decades, but some of them will be evolved over 4,000 years into the future, beyond the age of Aquarius, beyond the age of Capricorn, which follows Aquarius. I will be writing about the age of Capricorn a lot in this too. Far distant future view, farther than anybody's written. This is one of my apotheosis books, as I'm in a few days going to enter my on the 29th of October, I'm going to be entering my 70th year. We all celebrate it 12 months later, but I'm celebrating it as I enter it. And so, I'm coming of an age where I have to choose the things that I can write while I'm still healthy and available to write them. So the Book of Things to Come is one of those. Another book is The New Pagans, which is a book that Osho, my teacher, wanted someone else to write and design the pictures of, but it just strangely, miraculously, when that person couldn't handle the subject, it became my subject. No one did anything. Osho didn't tell me. It just happened. And so that book I've been preparing for 25 years and taking all the things Osho said about the coming of a new humanity in all of his 700 books. Well, mostly since the late 70s, he started talking about Homo novus, Zorba the Buddha. He used to say, I love Zorba the Buddha. I mean, I love Zorba the Greek. He is so juicy. He is so alive. He just has nothing, but he plays his guitar at the beach in the moon. But he has no soul. He says, I love Buddha. He is so beyond the body, beyond the mind. But he has no body. you know, the new man has to be a balance of both. He has to be a Buddha and a Zorba. Live lusty the life. Plant your roots deep into life's earth so that your tree can reach the stars. So that's the story that I'm going to talk about. Probably now it's going to be in a mostly fictional device with subplots that where I will insinuate, because it's going to be three different dimensions of narrative in it, um, because I have been involved with many thousands of people in my life that were working to create the new humanity, the Homo novus, the Zorba the Buddha. Our commune in Eastern Oregon, what if you don't listen to what the Oregonian had everybody talking in the press about, but if you actually came to our commune, I mean, I know, I lived there. I know these people. They're my people. And we went through, so some of the story is going to be my life with Osho and how some of these ideas of Aquarian ideas were be ours. He once said that people live the present in different time identifications. Some people in this present time live as if they're living in the 12th century. But he said also, some people live as if they're living in the challenges of the future. And he said, and you, my people, you are living in the 22nd century with what we're doing here, the good, the bad, the challenges. And so it'll be my autobiography as well as a history of in a fictional form where I take two people, a man and a woman, who end up being together in their lives through all the seven stages of life that on that period of time is lived 350 years average. So you live a long time, longer than now. And so it tells their stories until individually until they meet each other, and then it tells their stories and with their kids and all of that. And it's basically giving into a storytelling fictional style device all the things that Osho said about his vision for the new man, which were prodigious. And so I'm gathered it all. It took me actually 30 years. All of the books I have of Osho are little, you can't see the top of the book for all the tags. So I've been working on this for 30 years as one of my long-term projects. And so, I hope to have it out before I'm in the 2030s, so, and the other important project is the last word on Nostradamus that anybody's ever done, a 4-volume, 3,000 page examination divided by 4 of all of his prophecies, giving all of them the room they need to go very deep into each verse of the 942 verses and the other extra 100 verses, and go deep also into something nobody in English-speaking world has seen, and that is his even larger set of almanac prophecies written down from 1560 up to posthumously published his final in 1567, which have not just prophecies about his own local time and world, but he sometimes jumps off into some of his most famous prophecies are actually about our times. They just drop in there. And nobody's actually looked at them. And even the French people that are my good sources, they didn't interpret them. They just did marvelous, like Chevignard and all did marvelous scholarship to bring all the verses together. One book didn't make it. The 15651 book has disappeared, and even Chauvigny, when he was putting all these together in the 1580s, he was Nostradamus' secretary when he was an old man and scholar. He was very young when he was with him. He even had to um, he put out a letter, which I have the note just for the one page for it says, anybody have a copy of the 1551? Please give it to me or notify me. And of course, he never got it. And that was like 4 centuries ago. So um, most of Nostradamus's material survived because Nostradamus is one of the earliest best-selling authors of the printing press revolution. So when you have lots of units scattered all over the place, you tend the wear and tear of time tends not to gobble up them all. And so this project, I started renewing what I wrote in my book, Nostradamus, The Complete Prophecies, back in the mid-1990s, and it was published in 1997, making me the third of 4 human beings that have been crazy enough to try to translate and interpret the the main core of Nostradamus's prophecies, which everybody mistakes being all of them, and that is the 2 prophetic prose letters, the preface and the letter to Henry III, the 942 surviving out of the 1,000 quatrain 4-line verses, and then some of the verses from the almanacs which survived. That usually is considered the main opus of Nostradamus, called Le Prophéties, prophecies. It isn't, and but 4 crazy men, starting with Henry C. Roberts in 1948. He just had them all translated English with a few lines of interpretation, like Chauvigny and others had done in French. So it was nice to see all the prophecies, but it was not like, couldn't you tried a little harder at the interpretation? Then came in 1961, one of the greatest scholars among the 4 of us, and that was Edgar Leone. Did a masterful traditional scholarly examination of all the work. Um, but he admitted that he had no understanding of Nostradamus's occult understandings, and that's its weak point. But he's honest about it. Very honest scholar. But of course, that causes him not to understand. This is very fundamental. It's like saying, well, um, I'm not going to, I don't understand the occult, but I'm going to write a book about the occult. That'd be like me saying, well, I don't understand love, and I try to avoid being in love so that I can be objective and write about it. You know, you have to be, if you're going to be successful at this, you have to not only be a scholar, not only be able to at least read 16th century Nostradamian French, which is its own language. Um, you also have to fall in love with making prophecy. You have to also be a seer. And otherwise, it's like you can't write about love. Well, you can't write about prophecy unless you have experienced the mystical rite. And so otherwise, how will you really know the core of what Nostradamus is talking about? So I guess that's why I've been the go-to guy on planet Earth since I've been doing this for 50 years. And I'm the last. I mean, um, Mario Reading after me did a vol. I wrote the largest volume of just the main prophecies of anybody, but Mario Reading was close behind me. In the end of the 1990s, he also wrote one, but he got into the trap of seeing a pattern in Nostradamus's chaos and believing that the chaos was a device and it's all pattern. Hackham's razor was my first experience with Nostradamus. I realized, you know what? There is no order, random order, but it's all chaos. It's all out of these quatrains. There's sometimes several quatrains that are really chapters in one prophetic story, and he's thrown them all out of sequence so that he can keep evil people from reading them and making the future worse, like Hitler's people were doing, like Churchill's people were doing in World War II. Um, and they could have made the world worse. So he felt responsible for that. That's why he wrote in anagrams and code and wild poetry, as he called it. Because and the other reason he says, if some people could see how, because of their sensitivities, if they could see how vastly different the future would be for their religions, their politics, and all that, they would curse their future. And that is why I was forced to use a flim-flam artist's technique of codes and things. But also what it does, it also keeps a lot of people away that wouldn't understand it anyway. Sometimes in occult writing, you want to piss people off. You want to kind of make it hard for them to stay with you. I mean, case in point, and any Gurdjieffian disciple of George Ivanovich Gurdjieff understands. You try to read his narratives of Beelzebub's tales to his grandson, All and Everything, or Life is Only Real Then When I Am. This Armenian Greek citizen of the Russian Empire, when it was at its final days, he lived on to in Paris in 1949. At 86, he died. But you have to read him, and it does something to your head. You have to be concentrating. You have to be aware. You read it, and what can happen sometimes is the writing actually makes your mind stop, and you have a no mind experience, which is the very core of everything that's about this. And Nostradamus has the same stream of consciousness in his prose prophecies. They literally, like his first with his son, a tribute to his son, a preface to the whole thing that he wrote in 1554. Yeah, that is mostly about his magical secrets. And you will then the letter to Henry III is like a biblical Nostradamus style of history from his time to the future. And you literally, in the middle of one of his long, endless sentences, he will jump a century or two in the same sentence and come back. And I found a way to make, I think, it work. But basically, you're just writing down these narratives like you're in the rapids of what could be. And it's quite a ride. And it is a bit similar to what Gurdjieff does with profoundly deep spiritual ideas, one of the greatest masters that ever walked the earth, George Ivanovich Gurdjieff. Um, so what was it? It must be getting late now. We must be in Act 3 of Valkyra by now.
Well, it is too. It's we hit the 2 hour mark.
Oh,
But let me.
good.
I do want to remind the audience. Please click the link in the description of this video and all the videos I've done with John. That will take you to his website, so you can sign up for his periodical and you can do a reading. I have done a reading 5 years ago, I think it was,
Yes, it's
and
been that long.
yeah, and it's something that I think someone should do, especially near the end of the year. I think that's kind of
Mm.
a good time to do it.
Tis the season.
It to the season, right? You know what's? Have you been just before we go? Have you been listening to CNN when they're interviewing this poli-sci professor? He's the Nostradamus of the election. That's his little kind of moniker. Have you heard of this guy?
We all come out of the woodwork every 4 years. And
Well,
some of us actually are accurate, but most of us aren't.
so I forgot his name, but he's been on CNN for quite a bit. He's basically saying that Kamala will win. Now, what is interesting, it wasn't so much his mathematical model to do this prediction. What was interesting in this election cycle is that he just seemed as though there's almost this self-mutilization of white males that's going on.
Yeah,
All right, and then someone might say,
it is. It
yeah,
is happening.
but that's
And if he doesn't
because
know that, and if he doesn't know where that's coming, then that shows the nature of his prophetic bias. You cannot, you cannot be a CNN person. You cannot be a Fox person. You have to be, you can't be right wing or left wing. You have to be free wing.
right,
It's the only
right,
way it works. I never
right,
vote for these people.
right, right.
I cannot give an ego identification to Trump or Harris. And even though some of the things I might see that are better for one or the other, people should, you make a mistake to think that I am biased one way or the other. You might want to look at your reactions and see me as your mirror.
That's the impression I get with this guy on CNN. He's using his factorial model stating that Harris will win, but I feel as though there was some sort of bias in his analysis where he says, okay, the United States is moving, multicultural, which it is.
Well, it's always been
And therefore,
multicultural. It's just
but
whether
there,
it's
but
been nice with
yeah,
it or not.
yeah, well, but
I mean,
he's
it's
saying, but
very
he's basically just because we have a female multicultural candidate versus an old white guy, the
biased. Well, there's
country
some
is, yeah,
bias.
therefore the country must go and vote for Harris. So this is uh this is the world that we live in right now.
Well, and every 4 years, these crackpots come out, and some of us who got staying power since like 1968, we see them come, we see them go.
I forgot his name.
There was once an octopus that was always predicting the soccer matches in the World Cup. But I realized why, because the flags that had the colors that he was attracted to, just by chance, happened to be the people who won. When he
Hmm.
reach in and grab the mollusk to eat or something like that. Um, and there was a parrot that was doing the same thing in India. So, I mean, um, the, if I were on that show, I would say to him,
I can't remember his name. I
you
forget
know,
what the professor's name was.
gender identification is the shape of your genitals is not to be the arbiter of who can be president or not, because we know that the derogatory way in which people some days can use the name of the genital to describe themselves. He's a really, you know what? And like he's a real a-hole. Well, now that part of the body isn't there. He's a real, you know what? And that's not the way either. I mean, it's
Because remember what you said earlier in the video, you were saying that Obama was chastising black males and They're going to move away from Kamala and move towards Trump. Well,
They
the
are.
same thing with white males. If we
And
keep on
same thing with
hearing,
Latino males and Latino
yeah,
people. They don't like all these 7 million people coming into America. They're going to take their jobs away because they're going to work for nothing. And so, we have and the other thing too is it's so silly that the Democrats think that this demographic in their demographic party move, that's what I call them, the demographic party now, because they're not democratic at all. And demographic is, I mean, it's the truth. You don't bring 7 million people in droves, pay them for being here. Why are they here? It's not because they love them, because guess what? Kamala Harris just the other day said on CNN on a town hall meeting with the former CIA page boy Anderson Cooper, yeah, who he and he even got her, and he's a total, one with the left side of things, and even he was getting frustrated. I watched her for a whole hour just not answer a single question, but go off like saying, well, you know, like, what do you think about apples? Well, in my best Marge Simpson voice. Well, Anderson, I think oranges are wonderful. That's basically what she's doing. And he got frustrated because when he's saying, okay, you said that the wall was stupid. You said it was his male ego that he was doing. He quoted all things she said years ago in the last election, how the wall was bad and stupid and evil and should never happen. And now here she is literally saying, we're going to build and finish the wall and we'll do it bipartisan. And so wait, you mean that $670 million that he got for being the wall? Now you're going to use that money and finish the wall? Well, then why did you call it stupid? Why are you now not calling it stupid? And she kind of went, well, and she just fluttered around it again. And then he went again. No, why not? I mean, uh, can you say that you're supporting Trump's wall? She couldn't. It was a disaster. I mean,
mm,
I don't know. The thing is, um, this election is about how many Demographic Party voters who are illegals can outflood the real feelings of a majority of American people, men, women, and all, that this person is not, Kamala Harris is not ready for primetime history.
I
And
don't know if she'll ever be ready.
no, she won't. I've been writing about because I have a couple chapters in this new thing on a couple articles where I'm looking at what I wrote on the astrology of both of them 4 years ago. And I'm pointing out where it says, here's where me as a person was trying to push the oracles thing a little in Kamala Harris's favor. And I called myself out and I said, well, this didn't happen. And what I then said later, that was the oracle. I was like saying, she's an empty pantsuit. It's inner astrology. Uh, Again, it's like I was saying about the too many trines. She has all these things she can do, but it's a thing about trines. When I read people who have a lot of trines, not everybody's unique, because really the key to reading prophecy, the key to reading in any divination technique is, there's a lot of astrologers out there that are better than me technically with astrology, but they've forgotten that astrology is supposed to trigger a divination event. It's a form of divination. And so there'd be a lot of good people who are technical with astrology, and they just don't, they're not accurate because they can't read the soul driver of the body, mind, Kelly Blue Book birth chart. I mean, and then I learned Nostradamus was a sloppy astrologer. There are astrologers from the 16th century that only have their place in the footnotes of his life in history books because they were condemning him for this and that and all. But one thing is, they're forgotten because they were never right. He might make mistakes in his astrology, but the astrology was not the thing. It was a means to an end to trigger an oracular experience. And if you want to shake a box and it works for you, then that's what you do. Like the Brahman seer, this great Scottish seer, he collected a very black obsidian meteorite that you could
Hmm.
look into. It had a bit of a reflection of him. And that's all he had, just a rock. But his prophecies are breathtaking. So the divination is an opening device. And whatever opens you, whether you're perfect at it or not, if you get there to the zone, that's what matters. Most
Hmm.
people who are just lost in the identification of the techniques, they don't get there because, and like this guy looking at certain ways of doing things, um, it's you have to be aware of your own biases, and you cannot be partisan. Then you're just a propagator. And
Well, what
in every 4 years, you got a one in two chances of being right. That doesn't mean you really predicted anything. You just got lucky.
when I compare what you've been saying and what this professor with the mathematical model that's trying to predict the election this cycle, I think where his model is missing that you bring up quite often is the chaotic behavior of Trump.
Yeah.
There's a there's something that you can't
Yes.
model. It's because it's chaotic, you know.
Well,
And so
yeah.
whatever mathematical model he's using to try to predict this election, you know what? I think there is an element of chaos.
Yeah.
Maybe it's from the divine. I don't know, but there's definitely chaotic events that are going to
Well,
create this
the
election
thing
cycle.
is, what did Nietzsche so beautifully say? Out of chaos, dancing stars are born. That's literally what he said in the correct English translation. Where is order born from? Chaos.
Uh, uh,
But chaos is not hiding order. A womb is not hiding a baby until it's inseminated. The chaos is the womb. The problem is this is true with science as well as all, and this will change in the Aquarian age. What will happen is science will have two wings. I've said it before, but it's important to remind everyone. This very Aquarian age. It's one of the hopes of the Aquarian age. Look at all our scientific advances as the Piscean age started to be influenced by the Aquarian age since the 1700s. We have had, we've been in the age of science. But the age of science is missing something because all the good we do gets turned into weapons. We could light the world with atomic power. We're trying to blow the world up with it. What's wrong here? What's wrong is, as much as the scientist knows the phenomenal world, the scientist does not know himself or herself at all. And so, for science to really be a blessing on the planet, one has to attain the wisdom of knowing thyself. I don't mean your body only, or your emotions, or your mind. I mean that which inside of you is always there, always eternally. You can find it if you live in the present and live life in moment to moment with a spontaneous intelligence. That's the space to do divination in. That's the space to mop the floor in. That's the space to grow plants in. That's the space to love your child. This is the space where there can be no war. This is the space where love guides and compassion. The, the mathematician that's trying to calculate Trump does not know himself. Therefore, he will only be randomly right. And this, I already sense it in him. He is anal retentive. He is trying to make order out of chaos. He's trying to control chaos according to his will. There can be no will in prophecy, no will at all. Even Hitler, despite all of his faults, when he had and Trump has it too, and he has a fault with it because he's a person who has channeled people he should never have channeled into his life. And everybody talks about how he didn't get us into a new world war. But I tell you something, Bolton and Pompeo, who he blindly channeled, they nearly got him into three wars that could have been world wars in his 4 years. So Donald's luck, his main sane luck of his North Node in the conjunction of his Gemini sun, Uranus, and the North Node, all together, very powerful. And Mr. Surprise is his natural state of being. Mr. Chaos too is, but what again, what I'll talk about in my third book is you help him, and he's learning. He learns a lot. You know, it's interesting to hear that I'm hearing this from people who've interacted with him in his day-to-day time as the presidency. He's constantly asking questions, intelligent questions. So he's well read, or he has just an instinctive understanding as a transactional person. And he'll like sit and he'll try, well, this, what if this happens? What would you say about that? And he stays with people until he goes, okay. He is interested in getting information before he makes decisions. There's a whole side of Trump that obviously the vulgar side makes it very hard to find. Just like the gobbledygook of Nostradamus's language sets people away, there is gold in there. And Bobby Kennedy is a really good example. He's been friends with Bobby for years, you know, and they're friends who respect having very different opinions. And he wants a cabinet that is a party of rivals. He even said, I love what Trump said, I love what Lincoln did. He had all the people who were competing with him being in his cabinet. And he said, that's the kind of cabinet I want. And I
I was
didn't know that
listening.
until I made my mistakes in the first term.
I listened to the audio book from Pompeo, America First. I think is the title.
Pompeo
And it,
first.
yeah, yeah. So in one of the chapters, what's interesting is in one of the chapters he talks about how Trump's um, activities in the White House were pretty energetic, and that he thrived. Trump thrived on this kind of energy, this chaotic energy.
Mm.
But when
He
Kelly
makes order
came,
out of it.
yeah, and so when Kelly came on board to run
The
the
press.
staff,
Oh, the staff, yeah.
the staff, right? That he kind of reduced the activity in the White House. And so
Yeah.
when Trump came into the Oval Office, he said that where's the action?
Yeah.
You know, he needed that energy. He needed people around him to bounce off ideas. I find it so interesting and how uh, Kamala, keeps on saying, well, Kelly said this and he's a bad guy, that Trump's a bad guy. You don't want him back in the office, blah, blah, blah. And, you have
Gossiping woman.
generals, you have generals that hate him and blah, blah, blah. But, the reality of the situation was he needed to have a chaotic environment to be able to be a good president.
That's
He,
right.
he works in this case. It's a very almost New York-ish kind of thing. There's this
Yeah.
chaotic
It is New York.
environment, yeah, that
I've been in New
happens.
York. It is New York.
Yeah,
It's kind of the magic of New York. It
yeah,
is it's a messy chaos and it's alive, that city.
right,
And
right,
and he
right,
is New York. And
right.
and he takes chaos if he's allowed to do chaos. See, the problem is he's surrounded by people. See, he's this very complicated Gemini. That's why when I do this book, I'm going to have quotes from famous Geminis, beginning and ending each chapter. And the two that are going to get the most, because they were quite contradictory people and celebrated it, was Walt Whitman, the American poet, who's a Gemini, and Richard Wagner, the German composer, who was a Gemini, a very powerful Gemini, very controversial, full of, he's a kind of man. And we can learn a lot from Geminis not to be zero or one, just trying to one-dimensionalize everyone. I mean, our egos in our lives are trained by our teachers to be lazy and always go for the easiest outcome, and most of the time not we don't even know, even when we are alive until we die, that every choice we made was not what was before us, but what we just lazily took the easiest road, which is usually the wrong road when you're challenged by something. But you know, Trump thrives on, he's even said it, I thrive on stress in a good way. I mean, guy doesn't sleep more than 2 to 3 hours a day his whole life. And he's one of those dynamos of energy. Is the more he gives, the more he gets of energy. And it's in that Leontine
Mhm.
ascendant and some of the other things that are going on. It is one of the most remarkable, unique charts that I've ever read. And I'm kind of shocked when I published that book to see how none of the other people in the astrology community even got there. And why? Because they couldn't get out of their own way and just see the man like a child sees somebody without all this bias and prejudice and expectations of what they should be. I just read his chart. I just put that all aside and just read his chart as if I never knew who this was. And I went, and it's one of the most amazing charts I've ever read. I wrote it in with the idea that I was doing a reading for him. And so I think if he read the book, he would say, yeah, that guy gets me. My warts and all, he gets me. Um, so maybe that'll happen someday. But anyway, he doesn't need to read it. You guys need to read it. Because if you really want to know how Trump ticks, I contend that my astrology examination of him is the closest anybody has come to really giving you a fair and balanced, warts and good sides at all. I don't pull any punches, and I don't pull any virtues either, because I don't have Trump derangement syndrome.
Right,
It is a
right,
disease.
right.
And
Oh, it's prevalent in New York. I mean, everywhere you turn, everyone
yeah, but
people.
as you
There's so
speak,
many people that hate him.
Madison Square Garden was absolutely packed tonight.
Right, right,
It was amazing the
right.
people that came. So I think it's quite amazing that he's been going to a lot of blue states. You know, he went to Coachella Valley, had a huge, all these Californians came out. I mean, he didn't do that last time. He's not just hitting the
Yeah,
red.
but if you're a person that thrives on chaos, you go into the den, where
Right,
there's animosity to
of
get
course.
that energy and to convert that energy.
Adrenaline,
Yeah, yeah,
it
yeah.
doesn't seem to like break him down.
No, it
I keep
strengthens him.
having to
It's a
remind myself that this man's approaching 80 and he acts like he's 40 years younger than he is. I've watched him play with a golf pro just to see what it's like to play with Donald Trump in golf. And I've noticed over the years that he's had to anticipate, kind of change his golfing stance a little bit because he's getting old, but he still nails that, and it goes right near the hole. You know, he has a hell of a swing. I mean, it's really good, and even the pro was going, man, I hope I can do that when I'm your age. You know, and you know he's his energy is phenomenal, and it rather than brought down, it should be encouraged and helped. You know, it's for your own, it's for all of your own good that you stop hating the man. If he becomes president, stop hating the man. Stop trying to take him down. Stop trying to shoot at him. You know, it's doesn't work. Um, and if it does, it's to your detriment. You know, because I mean, I've really seen a lot of people who are literally making themselves sick about this. And if he wins, there's going to be a whole lot of, I'm not worried about so much about the red side getting all angry. I'm worried about major riots and meltdowns from people who hate him.
Yep.
And you know, a wise person learns how to watch themselves as they are, but from a distance. And the distance isn't outside, the distance is from inside. Watch yourself from within as a movie. Go on being yourself. Don't suppress anything. Don't change anything. Then you stop the magic. Just be yourself, warts and all, and find this witness that's you. This is the thing in you that never can be born and never can die. You all it. It's, call it the divine, call it God, call it whatever you want. This is a space where things align on their own accord in their appropriate harmonic way. And nothing is done to make it happen. You can't make wisdom through effort. You can make it through surrender. As-salam is what the Muslims call it. Not Islam is love. It means to submit, to surrender to existence. That's what as-salam means. It doesn't mean, now that doesn't mean, now surrendering not mean like give up your freedom and all, but just let go. Just be. Inshallah, God willing. You know, there is a certain, you let go of control and then you become ordered. You know, then it's not a question of control, it's a question of centering. And then when you're centered, you can respond to things, whatever it is, in a much better way. And there's a quality, I mean, Trump's said it himself on 60 Minutes, right out of the blue. One of those moments where he says something childlike that is absolutely cutting and absolutely true, like the boy in the emperor's new clothes sitting on his shoulders of his father so he could see over the other people and see that the emperor's walking by buck naked. And he goes, "Look, Daddy, the emperor's buck naked." Because he didn't hear the story of the con man. It went all over the capital where the con man was making these invisible clothes for him. He says, "Oh, great emperor, I must tell you, um, these magical clothes can only be seen by people who are not bastards, not their father's child." So the emperor's going, "Oh," he looks at his clothes. He knows he sees himself buck naked. And he goes, "Oh, these are beautiful." He's thinking, I'm the king's son and I'm not his son. I'm a bastard. So that went, he made sure that that message was heard by everybody. So they're all the adults are out there seeing him walking naked and they're all going, "I'm a bastard." But the child who doesn't have this baggage, his innocence says, he's naked. And there was a moment when Trump said, he just went like, you know, he's like he was just discovering it, like a child's discovering something new. I haven't changed since I was 8 years old. I'm still that 8-year-old child. And it was such a profound statement. And I went, so I love it. It was just how people are just so biased to him that they don't. I said, you know, he's an 8-year-old. How do you know that? Well, he said so himself. What? Yeah, he said, I haven't changed since I'm 8, which means he's innocent. He has an innocence, precocious sometimes. I mean, like the time he talked about how he took the blocks of his brother because he was building a skyscraper with it. And then he loved it so much that he glued it, all the blocks when he was 8, you know, so the skyscraper couldn't be used by anybody. He just made it stand. So it's quite a journey, his astrology. You know, that book is still available. President Trump predictions, or Trump for president. Um, astrological predictions, and it's my most accurate book. Um, it's still topical, very topical. So you can check that out and at Amazon. It's also in Lulu and also Amazon prints it out as well. But it's worth reading, especially now because I think I don't. I may be wrong. I'm less sure about this. I'm sure about him winning the popular and electoral college vote. I'm sure of it. But, and I've been sure of it long before it looked obvious that Kamala Harris was having a disastrous campaign. I was seeing this back in early September before all this stuff hit the fan. And now I'm seeing, well, and then the other thing that was very helpful in this is that, I do things through intuition, but I make sure that there's certain people that I know who are really good at what they do through math, really good through polling science. I mean, this guy who's predicting for CNN is one guy, not that, but Nate Silver is somebody I've been watching for many presidential cycles. I make a point not to watch him until I've got my intuitive feeling, and I'm amazed how, except for his missing the Hillary Clinton thing, um, and he admitted it. That's the other thing that gives me respect for him. He has admitted that he got kind of gaga with the Clintons and he got biased and he didn't do what he usually does. And he didn't like Trump, but he got over that. He got over his Trump derangement syndrome. And now, I was shocked to see that, my God, I'm feeling the men walking away. I'm feeling the landslide for weeks. And then here's Nate saying, the poll shows he's going to win, that her popularity will die if she didn't get enough of the advanced ballots, that wasn't going to go well. And then towards right up to the election, everything he's calculated is happening. She was going to crash, in popularity. People are going to turn away from her. Just at the end, it would be at the worst. And that Trump could win. It might be an early night.
So I hope
Isn't
so.
that weird? Isn't
I'll
that
tell
weird?
you, I was,
It's still against what my
covering
own personal feeling is, but
I
hey,
was covering last year's, and when I went to bed, I really thought when I woke up in the morning we would have Trump as president, and it was totally the opposite. And I was like, "Huh?" And we don't have to rehash what happened; everyone knows. But I mean,
yeah.
so I hope it's definitive. It'd be nice if it's definitive.
Yes, it would be. And, with either side, but I'm looking at the facts of it. The Demographic Party is really trying to do something illegal and terrible, and and if they succeed, if those leaders in it who don't even like their own voters, that's why they pick somebody that doesn't even get a vote. Well, the elites all the way into it. She's placed in there like it's some kind of a Soviet election. It's if that wins, really the country's going to unravel, and that would not be nice. And one of the first things we need to do in this country is reestablish our respect for our electoral process, because we're not. Two things that are going to destroy us as a republic of democracy is one, our free speech. And Kamala Harris has made it absolutely clear. I have the videos, I have all of it, because this is a volatile thing to say, but she is absolutely for monitoring the First Amendment according to her ideas and the Democrat Party's ideas of what is good speech and bad. This is the very fundamental reality. Without the First Amendment, there's no America. You're living in something else. There was even a Supreme Court motion or conclusion about the famous, with a lot of people who want to make free speech a privilege rather than a right. They don't even know that the Supreme Court actually, it went to the Supreme Court, the famous story of the guy yelling fire in the middle of a theater and causing a stampede and getting people injured and killed. And their finding was, although how he used his free speech was onerous, yelling fire is free speech. He freely yelled it. And now, because freedom requires responsibility to be free, he uses free speech badly. And we're not going to punish free speech because of the word fire. We're punishing him for hurting other people. So it's so these people are wanting to monitor speech. They're blaming speech. Like if you can't, I hope people understand this analogy, because a lot of people on the left think that things that people say is like calling fire, and they're not, of other things. And she's absolutely dedicated as president. She's going to shut down the only public commons on cyberspace in the world that struggling with making free speech for everybody. Elon Musk's X, Twitter. She wants to destroy it, shut it down. And if that happens, we're not living in the United States of Europe, or United States of America. We're living in a fascist state, and it'll have no future. So I don't want that to happen. So this end of an epoch of Pluto means that in the next orbit that's beginning of Pluto, there's no America left. And I'm happy to see, hopeful to see, that a whole lot of people are waking up to this. And I think maybe enough that will make Mr. Chaos come into establish order. But that's going to be, this is not the end of the story. His election's the beginning. And then the whole process of this wonderfully messy, chaotic thing called democracy can work. I mean, our founding fathers made it messy because totalitarians always have efficient governments, and they have nothing to do with your rights. So off with their heads, it's like, so it's going to be messy. It will be abused, but the answer of abusive free speech is more speech. That's what Judge Napolitano says all the time. And it's so true. More speech, not less. If you don't like how one guy writes an alternative history that tries to prove there was no Holocaust by Nazi Germany, don't arrest him and put him in jail. That's what a Nazi would do. Engage him, expose his facts, show the Germans kept a lot of records that he's overlooked. More speech puts such an argument in its place. But if you act like a Nazi, you missed a chance. It takes a lot of work to be in a democracy. The citizens of this country have forgotten that they have their part in always being watchful of their elected officials, always, every day, for the rest of your life. Because if you don't, they will stop being afraid of you, as Jefferson said. They will stop being afraid of you. And then they will do things to you because they know you are not going to respond. That's what bullies do until you push them on their bum. I know from personal experience in the sandlots of my youth. So the American people have to grow up, man up, woman up to your responsibilities as a citizen. You are responsible for this mess. Right, left, center, doesn't matter. We are all responsible for this mess because we have to learn that we have to be vigilant always with our governments, because the people that go into government, I was shocked to see how many times in American history, even when people were more responsible for their rights, how within a few months after the First Amendment it was already being challenged by even some of the founding fathers. Oh, that's too much freedom, and people had to fight it. This is a revolutionary idea, a very Aquarian idea, the idea of freedom of speech, whatever, and its whole. I mean, Napolitano, the judge judging freedom, he did a whole long thing on this once, a speech where he did. Oh yeah, was it the speech where Scott Ritter and all these people were in Kingston? And his speech was so remarkable. I was not expecting it. And he went through the whole history of how the First Amendment has struggled from even the beginning of being overthrown by people like today, like Kamala Harris, are still not getting it, what it's about. So we have to defend this, and we can defend it with free speech.
Right, exactly.
And with all Trump's faults, he is a fast friend of Elon Musk and X. he wants free speech. And you know what? This is a one issue subject for most people. If you are not that interested in free speech, well, vote for Kamala Harris. You'll get what you deserve. And so will we, not being more vigilant. But if you love free speech, take a chance with the Chaos Boy. And there are dangers. I list a lot of them out. There are lots of dangers with him, but he has the edge because for the future of this nation, because he is more open to change and free speech and not wanting to, woke you down.
Right. Okay. Well, we have to wrap it up, John. But I
And
just want to
I
remind the
guess
audience.
we're all cure Act 3 now.
I want to remind the audience. Please click the link. Those links will take you to John's website, so you can sign up for the periodical and do the reading. So before we wrap up, John, thank you very much for coming on board and telling us your take on how the election will hopefully transpire in a week. And I do appreciate doing these shows. I learn a lot from
Getting more and more feedback each time from more and more people, and I really love the feedback for us. I hope they're writing you too, because we have a building audience that really loves these
yeah.
every other Sundays.
Yeah.
I love it. I love you
Yeah.
all for bearing with me.
I know that people enjoy it around the world. It's not just in the United States.
Yeah, it's around the world.
So thank you again, John. And before I stop the recording, you have to say goodbye to everybody.
Goodbye, everyone. Love you.
All right. Very good. Let me stop the recording here.